Admiral Kexler stared at the dead communication screen for 10 seconds before his military training kicked in. Around him, his bridge crew waited in terrified silence. The tactical display still showed the impossible truth. Hundreds of human warships surrounding his fleet like wolves around wounded prey. "Analysis," he barked at his sensor officer. "I want to know everything about those ships. Size, armament, shield strength, everything." The young Zephyrian's hands trembled as he worked his console. "Sir, the readings don't make sense. The largest ships are registering as 12 kilometers long. Their power signatures are off our measurement scales. I'm detecting weapon systems we don't even have classifications for. 12 kilometers. Kexler's own flagship was barely 3 kilometers long and was considered one of the largest ships in the Zephyrian Navy. These human dreadnoughts were 4 times that size. "Commander Velan," he said without taking his eyes off the display, "get me a priority channel to High Command. They need to know what we're facing." Before Velan could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered to life. But instead of Morrison, a different human appeared. This one was older, maybe 50 years, with gray hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to see through armor plating. The uniform he wore was black with silver insignia that even Kexler could tell meant high rank. "Admiral Kexler," the human said in a voice like grinding steel. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun, Commanding Officer of the Terra Sol Defense Fleet. Commander Morrison informs me you require additional time to consider surrender. Unfortunately, time is something you no longer have." Behind Chun, Kexler could see what was obviously a warship's bridge, but it was massive, easily 3 times the size of his own command center. Officers moved with practiced efficiency between stations that controlled weapons he couldn't even imagine. "You have 3 minutes to order your fleet to power down weapons and prepare for boarding," Chun continued. "Any ship that fails to comply will be destroyed. Any ship that attempts to flee will be hunted down and eliminated. This is the only warning you will receive." Kexler found his voice. "Admiral Chun, perhaps we can discuss terms." "There are no terms," Chun cut him off. "You invaded our space. You murdered our people. You destroyed our colonies. The time for discussion ended 15 years ago when you fired the first shot. You have 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The screen went dark again, leaving the bridge in chaos as junior officers began shouting reports of human ships taking attack positions. Kexler felt the walls of his military career closing in around him. 15 years of victories were about to become meaningless in the face of this overwhelming force. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "I'm receiving surrender signals from the Vengeance and the Bloodhawk. Captain Mortis says his shields are being scanned by weapons. That could vaporize his ship in seconds. More." Surrender signals flooded in as Zephyrian captains. Throughout the fleet realized the hopelessness of their situation. But Kexler was made of sterner stuff. He had not built his reputation by running from fights, even impossible ones. "All ships," he announced over the fleet communication system, "this is Admiral Kexler. We are warriors of the Zephyrian Empire. We do not bow to inferior species, regardless of their numbers. All ships target the largest human vessel and prepare to show these soft skins what Zephyrian courage looks like." Several of his bridge officers looked at him with expressions that bordered on mutiny. Velan stepped closer to his command chair. "Admiral," she said quietly, "perhaps we should reconsider. Their fleet is enormous, and our intelligence was completely wrong about human capabilities." Kexler spun to face her, all 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of absolute authority. "Are you suggesting we surrender to a species we've been defeating for 15 years? These humans got lucky. They managed to gather a large fleet, but numbers aren't everything in space combat. Zephyrian technology is still superior." As if the universe itself disagreed with him, the main screen suddenly displayed an incoming transmission. Not from Admiral Chun this time, but from Commander Morrison again. The human still looked completely calm, as if he were discussing the weather instead of an impending battle. "Admiral Kexler," Morrison said, "my sensors indicate your ships are powering weapons. I wanted you to understand something before you make what I assume will be your final mistake. Morrison gestured to someone off-screen, and suddenly the display changed to show a three-dimensional tactical map of the entire sector. Red icons represented Zephyrian ships, while blue ones showed the human fleet. But there were also green icons scattered throughout the map. Those green contacts, Morrison explained, are human ships that aren't part of Admiral Chen's main fleet. Stealth frigates, deep space interceptors, long-range missile platforms positioned at jump points throughout this system and the next 3 systems over. The map zoomed out further, revealing even more green contacts. They were everywhere, positioned along every possible escape route from the battle zone. The Zephyrian fleet wasn't just surrounded. It was trapped in a web of human forces that stretched across multiple star systems. You see, Admiral, Morrison continued, when humans prepare for war, we don't just prepare for the battle, we prepare for every possible outcome. Every ship in your fleet has been tracked since it entered human space 3 days ago. We know your fuel levels, your ammunition counts, your crew rotations. We've been watching and waiting. Kexler felt his confidence cracking like ice under pressure. 3 days ago, they had jumped into this system confident they were launching a surprise attack. The humans had known they were coming all along. But here's the thing that really matters, Morrison said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Admiral Chen's fleet? The one surrounding you right now? That's not even our main battle group. The tactical display changed again, showing a wider view of human space. Massive fleet icons appeared at strategic points throughout their territory. Each one was larger than Chen's force. Each one was positioned to defend critical systems or strike at Zephyrian supply lines. What you're looking at, Morrison explained, is the real human military. 15 battle groups, each one larger than the force you're facing now. Every ship crewed by professional soldiers who have trained their entire lives for this moment. This is what happens when humans go to war, Admiral. We don't just fight. We overwhelm. Kexler's legs suddenly felt weak. He sank into his command chair as the true scope of human military power became clear. Everything the Zephyrian Empire thought it knew about humanity had been wrong. Completely catastrophically wrong. Your move, Admiral, Morrison said. You can surrender and live to see tomorrow, or you can fight and discover why every other species in this galaxy learned to respect humans the hard way. But understand this. Either way, this war is over. The only question is how many Zephyrian lives you're willing to throw away before you accept that fact. On the tactical display, every human ship in the fleet began moving into attack formation with mechanical precision. Thousands of weapon locks appeared on Zephyrian vessels. Point defense systems came online. Fighter wings deployed from carrier bays in perfect synchronization. 30 seconds, Admiral Chen's voice announced over the communication system. All Zephyrian vessels have 30 seconds to begin surrender procedures or this fleet will commence firing. Kexler looked around his bridge at officers who had served with him for decades. Proud warriors who had conquered star systems and built an empire on the strength of Zephyrian arms. Now they looked at him with desperate hope that he would find some way to save them from the trap they had walked into. Sir, Valan said quietly, the crew is looking to you for orders. What do we do? Kexler closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the empire he had served his entire life. The Zephyrian way was to fight until death, to never surrender, to make enemies pay in blood for every victory. But looking at the tactical display, he realized that following tradition would accomplish nothing except the destruction of his entire fleet. 15 seconds, Chen's voice announced when Kexler opened his eyes. They were filled with the bitter taste of defeat. For the first time in his military career, he was about to do something that went against every instinct, every bit of training, every ounce of pride he possessed. Open a channel to the human fleet, he said quietly. The communication officer hesitated. Sir, open the channel, Kexler repeated, his voice stronger now. And transmit on all frequencies so every ship in the fleet can hear. The channel opened, and once again Admiral Chen's stern face appeared on the screen. But this time she wasn't alone. Commander Morrison stood beside her, along with other human officers in uniforms Kexler didn't recognize. All of them looked like predators who had finally cornered their prey. "Admiral Chun," Kexler said formally. "I am Admiral Kexler, commanding officer of the Zephyrian 7th Battle Fleet, in the name of the Zephyrian Empire. I hereby—" He paused, the words sticking in his throat like poison. 5 seconds. Chun announced coldly. Kexler straightened in his chair and spoke. The words that would end his career and change the course of galactic history. "I hereby surrender my fleet to human forces. All ships will power down weapons and prepare for boarding." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life as Zephyrian battlecruiser Dominion's fist hung in the void like a massive steel predator, its hull scarred from countless victories across the galaxy. Admiral Kexler stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the tactical display. The green dots representing his fleet surrounded the small blue dot of the human research station. "Pathetic," he muttered, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. 15 years we've hunted these soft-skinned creatures across space, and this is what they send to stop us? A single station with maybe 50 humans aboard. Commander Velen approached, her scales shimmering under the bridge lights. "Admiral, our scouts report the station has minimal defenses. Their weapons are outdated, their shields are weak. This will be over in minutes." Kexler's laugh rumbled through the bridge. Throughout the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire was feared. They had conquered 12 star systems, enslaved entire species, and built their reputation on the bones of worlds that dared resist them. Humans were just the latest species to learn this lesson. The war had started when human explorers, SCCIDENTLY, entered Zephyrian space. Instead of fleeing like intelligent beings, the humans had actually tried to communicate. They offered trade agreements and peace treaties. The Zephyrians saw this as weakness and attacked immediately. For 15 years, the Zephyrians had pushed deeper into human space. They destroyed colonies, captured ships, and took prisoners for their slave markets. The humans fought back, but their technology seemed primitive compared to Zephyrian war machines. Human ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, their armor thinner. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the station," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," Kexler ordered. "I want to hear them beg." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human male in a simple blue uniform. He looked young, maybe 30 years old, with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. There was something unsettling about how relaxed he appeared. "I'm Commander James Morrison of Earth Defense Research Station Alpha 7, the human said. His voice was steady, showing no fear despite facing a fleet that could turn his station into space dust. "I'm authorized to discuss terms of surrender." The bridge erupted in laughter. Zephyrian officers slapped each other on the backs, their joy echoing through the ship's halls. Several junior officers actually fell to the floor, overcome with mirth. "Terms of surrender?" Kexler wheezed between laughs. "Human, you seem confused about your situation. You have one small station. I have a battle fleet. There are no terms to discuss." Morrison nodded slowly. "I understand your position, Admiral. But before we proceed, I need to ask you something. In all your years of conquest, in all the species you've defeated, did you ever learn about human military doctrine?" "Your military?" Velan interrupted, her voice dripping with contempt. "We've studied your pathetic forces for years. Small ships, weak weapons, soft soldiers who die from a single plasma burst. Your military is a joke across the galaxy." Morrison's expression didn't change. "I see, so you never learned rule number 1. Kexler's laughter died away. Something in the human's tone made his combat instincts twitch. "What rule?" "Never assume you're fighting all of us," Morrison said quietly. Before anyone on the bridge could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Red dots appeared everywhere around the Zephyrian fleet. Not just a few red dots, but hundreds of them. "Report?" Kexler roared, his forearms now reaching for weapons. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures." The sensor officer shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Ships are decloaking all around us. Hundreds of them. They're big, sir. Much bigger than anything in our intelligence reports. The main screen split to show the tactical display. Where moments before there had been empty space, a vast human fleet now surrounded the Zephyrians. Massive dreadnoughts hung in the void like sleeping giants awakening. Sleek destroyers moved between them like hunting sharks. Fighter wings swarmed from carrier bays in perfect formations. Impossible, Elen whispered. Our scouts reported no human ships in this sector. We control all the jump points. How did they... You control the jump points you know about, Morrison interrupted, still calm on the screen. But you never found our back doors, did you? The routes we carved through dark space while you were busy conquering the obvious paths. Kexler stared at the display in growing horror. The human fleet wasn't just large, it was organized. Ships moved in perfect coordination, taking positions that any military commander would recognize as textbook encirclement maneuvers. These weren't the desperate defenders they'd been fighting for 15 years. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we're being hailed by multiple human vessels. They're identifying themselves as units of something called the Terra Sol Defense Fleet. Morrison smiled for the first time during the conversation. Admiral Kexler, meet the real human military. The ships and stations you've been fighting? Those were frontier defense forces, colonial militias, research station security teams. You've been fighting our civilians and calling it war? The bridge fell silent except for the continuing alarms. Every Zephyrian officer stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 15 years of easy victories suddenly took on a very different meaning. You see, Morrison continued, humans have this thing about protecting our own. When you attacked our outer colonies, we pulled back our main fleet to protected space. We let you think you were winning while we planned our response. Every attack you made gave us more intelligence about your ships, your weapons, your tactics. Kexler found his voice. You let us slaughter your people to study us? We let some of our people fight and die to save all of our people, Morrison corrected, his tone growing colder. Every frontier station that held the line bought us time to prepare. Every colonial militia that stood their ground gave us data. They knew what they were doing, Admiral. They were soldiers. On the tactical display, the human dreadnoughts began powering up their weapons. Energy signatures that made Zephyrian battlecruisers look like children's toys lit up across the fleet. The smallest human destroyer in the formation was larger than any ship the Zephyrians had brought to this battle. This is impossible, Kexler repeated. Our intelligence networks, our scouts, our deep space reconnaissance. How did we miss a fleet this size? Morrison's smile disappeared, replaced by something much more dangerous. Because you assumed humans were like every other species you'd conquered. You thought we'd mass our forces at obvious strategic points. You expected us to fight the way you fight. But Admiral, we're not like the others. The human commander leaned forward in his chair. We're apex predators from a death world that tried to kill us for millions of years. We learned to hunt in packs. We learned to lay traps. We learned that sometimes you let the prey think it's winning until you're ready to strike. Warning klaxons blared as Zephyrian ships throughout the fleet tried to acquire target locks on the humans. But for every Zephyrian vessel, there were 4 human ships already locked onto them. The hunters had become the hunted in a matter of minutes. 15 years, Morrison said quietly. 15 years of watching you butcher innocents while telling ourselves it was necessary. 15 years of preparation. Do you know what humans do when we have 15 years to prepare for war, Admiral? Kexler's throat went dry. Around him, his bridge crew stood frozen at their stations, all pretense of superiority evaporated. We get very, very good at it, Morrison finished. The human commander stood up from his chair. For the first time, Kexler noticed that Morrison's uniform bore insignia he didn't recognize. Not the simple markings of a research station commander, but something far more complex. Something that spoke of deep training and hard-won experience. Admiral Kexler? Morrison said formally. "I am Commander James Morrison, United Earth Navy SEALs attached to Special Operations Command. You are hereby ordered to surrender your fleet immediately or face the consequences of engaging the full military might of humanity." "SEALs?" Villan whispered. "What are SEALs?" Morrison heard her. "Sea, Air, and Land Old Earth designation for our Special Operations Forces. We're the ones they send when they need something done quietly. Or, in this case, when they need someone to deliver a message that will be heard across the galaxy." Kexler looked at the tactical display one more time. Hundreds of human ships surrounded his fleet. Weapons that could crack planets were aimed at his hull. Everything he thought he knew about this war had just been turned upside down. "What message?" he asked quietly. Morrison's expression grew grim. "That the easy part is over, Admiral. For 15 years, you fought human civilians and frontier guards. Now you get to fight human soldiers. The question is whether you're smart enough to surrender, or stupid enough to find out why humans earn the respect of every other species in this galaxy the hard way." The screen went dark, leaving the Zephyr bridge in stunned silence. Outside, the human fleet held position, weapons powered but not yet firing, waiting for an answer to an ultimatum that would determine the fate of the war. The third day dawned gray and cold, with storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The final phase of Exercise Deadshot would be the most challenging yet. Live fire against automated defense systems that had been programmed with the combat data of the galaxy's most elite warriors. These weren't simple training drones, but sophisticated military eye systems capable of learning, adapting, and hunting with lethal efficiency. Marcus Chun stood at the edge of the deployment zone, watching as 17 remaining marksmen prepared for what many considered the ultimate test of sniper skill. 3 participants had been eliminated during the previous day's exercises, and the pressure was building as the competition entered its final phase. "General," Thixara addressed the assembled marksmen one final time, "Phase 3 will test not just your accuracy and stealth, but your ability to survive against an enemy that learns from every encounter. The ADS units have been programmed with combat algorithms from 12 major galactic conflicts. They will hunt you, they will adapt to your tactics, and they will not hesitate to eliminate you if given the opportunity." She gestured toward the massive training complex that stretched beyond the horizon. "Your objective is simple: eliminate all designated targets while avoiding elimination yourself. The ADS units are equipped with non-lethal but incapacitating weapons. If you are hit, you will be unconscious for 6 hours and automatically eliminated from the exercise." Marcus checked his equipment one final time. His Barrett M10701 felt familiar and reassuring in his hands, its weight and balance as comfortable as an extension of his own body. While other marksmen carried weapons that hummed with exotic energy or displayed holographic targeting information, Marcus's rifle was refreshingly simple: metal, wood, and centuries of proven design. "The exercise begins in 30 minutes, General Thixara continued. "You will be inserted at random locations throughout the combat zone. The ADS units are already active and hunting. Remember, they have been programmed to learn from your tactics. What works once may not work twice." As the marksmen dispersed to their insertion points, Marcus overheard fragments of conversation from his alien counterparts. Most were discussing their weapons' technical specifications and automated targeting systems. Several were coordinating with their equipment's AI assistants to optimize their approach. Marcus preferred silence. He used the time to enter the mental state that had kept him alive through 3 tours of duty, complete awareness of his environment, absolute confidence in his abilities, and the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The insertion was by drop pod, a harrowing descent through atmospheric turbulence that deposited Marcus in a dense forest valley approximately 40 kilometers from his nearest competitor. As his pod's stealth systems activated and the canopy opened, he immediately began the process of disappearing into the landscape. Human snipers had perfected the art of camouflage long before joining the Galactic Defense Council. Marcus used techniques that predated spaceflight, natural materials to break up his outline, careful positioning to avoid creating artificial-looking shadows, and movement patterns that mimicked the natural rhythms of the forest. Within 20 minutes of landing, he had established a primary hide with 3 separate escape routes and 2 alternate firing positions. More importantly, he had begun the mental process of thinking like his enemy. The ADS units were sophisticated, but they were still machines following programmed parameters. They would search in logical patterns, prioritize threats based on predetermined criteria, and react to stimuli in predictable ways. Understanding these patterns was the key to survival. Marcus spent the first hour simply observing, using skills that human hunters had developed over millennia. He watched the movement of wildlife, noting how birds and small animals reacted to disturbances in their environment. He studied the wind patterns and how they affected sound transmission. Most importantly, he looked for signs of the AA's unit's presence. The first contact came at 0847 hours. A flash of reflected sunlight approximately 2 kilometers to the north indicated the presence of at least one ADS unit. Through his scope, Marcus could barely make out a sleek, humanoid form moving through the forest with mechanical precision. The machine was following a search pattern that made perfect sense from a tactical standpoint. Systematic coverage of the terrain with overlapping fields of observation. It was efficient, thorough, and completely predictable to someone who understood how algorithms processed information. Marcus remained perfectly still as the ADS unit passed within 400 meters of his position. He could see its sensor arrays sweeping back and forth, searching for any sign of the marksman who had been inserted into the combat zone. The machine's movements were fluid and silent, but they lacked the irregular rhythms that characterized living beings. After the unit passed, Marcus began to move. Not toward any target, but to a position where he could observe and learn. Human intelligence gathering had always relied more on patience than technology, and Marcus was prepared to spend hours understanding his enemy before taking any action. By noon, he had identified the patrol patterns of 3 separate ADS units and located 2 potential targets, heavily armored command nodes that needed to be eliminated for mission success. More importantly, he had begun to understand the limitations of his enemy's programming. The ADS units were incredibly sophisticated, but they were designed to counter conventional galactic warfare tactics. They expected energy weapons with distinctive signatures, rapid movement between firing positions, and aggressive tactics that prioritize speed over stealth. What they weren't programmed to counter was the patient, methodical approach of a human sniper who was willing to wait hours for the perfect shot. Marcus's first engagement came at 30:47 hours. One of the command nodes had established a temporary position in a clearing approximately 1,800 meters from his location. The ADS units were patrolling the perimeter, but their search patterns left a 17-second window. Every 8 minutes, when the target was exposed without direct observation, Marcus waited through 3 complete cycles, timing the patrol patterns with the precision of a chronometer. On the 4th cycle, he took his shot. The .50 caliber round traveled for 2.3 seconds before striking the command node's primary processor. The kinetic impact was devastating, sending fragments of sophisticated electronics cascading across the clearing. Most importantly, the shot had been fired during the brief window when no ADS units were observing the target zone. The response was immediate but misdirected. ADS units converged on the target area, searching for the source of the attack. Their sensors detected the projectile's trajectory and began calculating possible firing positions. But Marcus was already gone. Moving to a secondary position that he had selected hours earlier, the beauty of chemical-propelled projectiles became apparent as the ADS units struggled to locate their attacker. Energy weapons left clear signatures that sophisticated sensors could track back to their source almost instantaneously. Marcus's rifle left only the fading heat signature of burned gunpowder and the brief disturbance of a supersonic projectile's passage. By the time the ADS units reached the calculated firing position, Marcus was 800 meters away and completely concealed in a new hide that he had prepared during his initial reconnaissance. The machines searched the area methodically, but found nothing to indicate a sniper's presence. Throughout the afternoon, Marcus eliminated 2 more targets using similar tactics. Each shot was carefully planned and executed during brief windows when the AI's unit's attention was focused elsewhere. Each time, the machines responded quickly, but were unable to locate the source of the attack. What made Marcus's approach so effective wasn't just his primitive weapon, but his understanding of how to exploit the gap between artificial and human intelligence. The ADS units were programmed to counter known threats based on established patterns. They expected snipers to behave like snipers from their database, using advanced technology, taking multiple shots from the same position, and prioritizing speed over stealth. Marcus violated every assumption in their programming. He used ancient techniques that predated their combat algorithms by millennia. He took single shots and disappeared completely. Most importantly, he thought like a predator rather than a soldier, using patience and cunning instead of firepower and technology. As evening approached, chatter indicated that several other marksmen had been eliminated. The Gorvani sniper had been detected after his quantum destabilizer created an exotic energy signature that the A's units learned to track. 2 Nexarian marksmen had been eliminated when their advanced targeting systems were detected by the machine's counter-surveillance protocols. Even Veloth, the Korvaxi champion, was struggling. His plasma rifle's energy signature had been cataloged by the ADS units after his first engagement, and they were now actively hunting him using specialized sensors designed to detect Korvaxi technology. Marcus, meanwhile, remained undetected and had successfully eliminated 4 of the 6 required targets. His approach was so far outside the ADS units' programming parameters that they hadn't yet developed effective countermeasures. For his tactics, the 5th target proved to be the most challenging. It was located in an urban environment,